All right, we seem to be live now. So let's get started. So software engineering career planning has now become very straightforward. Go to an AI assistant, type elite code, question number, the solution you want in which language. You will get an answer. Memorize it. Go and speak out that answer without understanding in any big tech company interview, and you are set for the rest of your life. Reality seems to be a little different. Millions of people have the same information, and yet the software industry doesn't seem to be behaving the way I just described. So, what's really going on? Do people really understand what they are competing against? So, let's first try to phrase the question correctly. What is your biggest competition as a software professional? Is it the other candidates in the pool? Is it lack of your skills? And coding just happens to be one of the parameters. We'll talk about that later. And circumstances. There are many things possible, but how probable they are can define a lot of lives. Basically, that's what seems to be happening in the world. So, these are the various factors which we are going to talk about. Before I dive into a deeper introduction of myself, this is information based on 800 plus careers which I have seen throughout my career. These are the real people I have met and worked with. So, this is not a second hand information, this is real data. Is this enough to generalize anything in the world? No. But is this enough for me as an individual to make my decisions? Yes. So, this is the kind of information you need to have to plan your career. So, let's start with the introduction section up front as to what we are going to talk about in the next maybe an hour or so. Right. So, first, let's talk about the audience. Who are the people who definitely need this information? And in general, all software engineers will require this information either for themselves or to share with others. But there are some people who definitely need this for themselves first. So, first one is the group I would call aspirants, basically people who are looking for their first software engineering job. So, mostly this might comprise of students, but in general, it could be somebody who is entering the field a few years later in their life. But point being that you are looking for your first job, and there are certain factors which we will explore that are no longer applicable later in your career. So that's why this is a separate class. The next set is practitioners, people who have already started their software career and are looking to shape it better, or maybe even trying to make sense of it. Basically, existing software professionals looking for clarity and growth, irrespective of their designations. And the final set is the realists. These are the professionals who are trying to make sense of things around them, and they are trying to understand career trajectories based on the information available to them around them. And they face a peculiar challenge, which I'll talk about because it is data related, and facts are getting harder to find nowadays. Right? So let's get to the agenda. First, we will talk about the real competition. Like I said, that it is a bigger challenge than just the people sitting next to you in your classroom or in your office. How to define this particular set of parameters, which includes abstract things like maybe inflation, misinformation, lack of systemic standards, which we will explore in detail. Missteps. Where do people go wrong in general? Right? There is no fixed list as such, but there are certain things which tend to happen in majority of the cases. And one of the things that leads to is the over reliance on false hopes. Right? So let's see how to tackle those kind of scenarios. I've broken things down into 6 sections, basically to help you understand that parameters can be classified into separate sets, and sometimes you have to switch between these perspectives to make more informed decisions. And you might have heard this thing in many contexts. So, in this particular context, what it means is that your career gets defined within the first 10 years of your career trajectory. Realistically, it's 5 years, but I call it 10 because it is 5 years of education before you get your first job as well. So, the day you start your undergraduate education, many of your options go off the table, right? So if you have started engineering, you cannot become a doctor. Majority of the people cannot become a doctor. You have to go through a separate set of courses. So that's what I mean by time is money. That the first 10 years, let's say your 20s and teenage, is critical. So obvious question would be that why you should listen to me, especially someone who is neither famous nor rich. So the first thing is that I have experience and I'm speaking out of experience as well. So it is just another perspective which I am sharing with you. So there is no hard and fast rule for you to follow what I'm saying. You have to take away the questions which I am raising and answer them for yourselves. So basically, I'm just using the fact that I was born earlier than a lot of people and I have spent uh, enough time on the planet to make these kind of opinions and observations. So I have 20 years of experience in software industry, which includes my MS in electrical engineering from US. Then I have worked in diverse domains, which might not make sense to many, but I have worked across 5 to 6 different domains, and it includes first-hand research as well. So I was working with statistical signal processing. I have published papers and written thesis around the same thing, and it happens to be the background for a lot of AI work that is going on as well. So I have a very brief stint with those kind of research as well. So that also adds an additional perspective to my decision making. And right now I am teaching full time. So after working for around 18 years as an individual contributor, in 2022 I decided to give teaching a full time shot, because teaching and working create a conflict of interest. I didn't want to have that. So mostly I create courses around how to build software engineering careers, because a lot of things are changing, but at the same time, many things remain constant. So I focus on that kind of decision making instead of giving some sure shot silver bullets, right? So the course links are in description. You can go and check them out on Udemy. There are free reviews and free preview lectures as well. So let's come to the data source, the 800 careers which I mentioned. So I'm considering 100 people whom I'm still in touch with through various channels in various capacities, but I know about their careers. So that is still 12 standard 100. This includes a diverse group. Some people went into medicine, some people went into arts or something. Undergraduate around 300 through various things like coaching classes, GRE preparation, classmates, etc., etc. So that number comes down to around 300. Post graduation, which I did in US, so I was there for around 2.5 years, so around 200 people. Here, many international students also got added to the list. And across jobs, 200 people whom I consider first connections, like with whom I was in touch while I was working, and even after I left job, I have reliable sources to confirm what they have done in their careers. Right? This is a small subset of my network, not even small, but a smaller subset of my career. But these connections are verifiable data firsthand. Right? So the roles they are holding right now, this is equally important. So technical roles like staff engineer, senior staff engineer, architects, and those kind of things, around 70 plus people there. Around 20 plus people in academia, which is professor, assistant professor, postdoctoral students, etc., who have done PhDs. Many of them hold PhDs. So management, around 500 people. Entrepreneurs, 15. Uh, Self-employed people, 100. So the difference here I'm making is entrepreneurs have handed off their business to someone else, and self-employed are people like me who are earning their bread and butter. They might have hired more people, which I haven't, but basically their own efforts are also involved in the revenue. And 90 people, around 90 people, they are no longer working for various reasons. Some never started to work after graduation, and many kept moving out of the working force. So towards the later half of your career, this becomes a common thing. But the more important thing is the distribution in terms of percentages, right? A huge majority of people are in management roles. some by choice, some by virtue of circumstances. So you can see that only 9% are still in technical roles with whom I could communicate as an individual contributor. And based on domain, etc., that number keeps shrinking. And the number majority is in management roles. So you can notice this on your LinkedIn feeds, etc., as well. So if you know somebody who has 20 plus years of experience, you can ask them, and their networks will show us a separate pattern, but there will be a dominant group. So now let's talk about what is the bigger picture. People keep saying the rat race, etc., but you really need to understand that what are the factors which are in play when it comes to your career. You need not know everything about the entire universe. You just need to know the things that affect you, and the things which you control are the ones which you can optimize. But even after that, you have to decide and prioritize. So in those terms, time can be a huge factor, and that's why this kind of talk. So career, is it NP complete? So if you have taken a data structures and algorithms course, so in algorithms you come across the notion of NP completeness, right? So it seems philosophical, but actually it is statistically provable as well, that there are so many factors involved in your career decisions that it can get out of hand. So in case you don't know about NP completeness, you should study about it. So first thing is circumstances, like inflation, market saturation, like software skill-based saturation, systemic issues in hiring, etc. These all things contribute to your career in the longer term, but it is hard to actually control them. So for an example, nowadays everyone claims they are DevOps engineer, and some of them have cloud certification, irrespective of the background they came from, right? So many companies can choose to hire people with less experience to save costs, and manage to keep the salaries within that same bracket, right? But in the outer world, the cost of living fluctuates. It tends to keep going up, right? So these two factors, one is career related, the other one is personal life related, but somehow they seem to have a disengagement, right? The next thing is internal growth, right? If you lack certain personal skills and your mindset is not geared for learning, if you heavily rely on external sources to learn, so it can become problematic. So for example, if you are trying to learn something on your own, but you are kind of addicted to reels, so to speak, your attention span is going to reduce. That is human nature. There is no denying that thing. But if you are not changing your mindset, and if you keep assuming that you can watch reels as well as listen to 1 hour long lecture on a weekend, that's not happening. So your quality of entertainment defines your mental state, and your mental state defines the capacity of accumulating knowledge. As human beings, we are fixed uh, storage systems. Eventually, our memory starts saturating, and we keep replacing new information at cost of older one. Right? That is a very crude way of looking at human brain. So unlearning keeps getting harder. You might have seen older people find it hard to learn. So always consume something which is worth your memory. If you end up remembering it, it shouldn't be something that comes at a cost of something useful. So just tune your entertainment accordingly. Another thing is like in software interviews, there is no feedback as to what you did wrong, and that leaves most people trying to assume that it was coding, and they just keep fixing that particular way of doing things. But coding is actually just a way of communicating with the machine. It is not the entire uh, picture, right? You have to come up with a solution and then implement it using coding. You cannot just blindly start coding. So anyway, the point being that sometimes coding is not the problem. It is your communication skills, and you cannot fix them by coding. You have to fix them by communicating. So one way to look at software engineering is it's a purely communication based work, right? When you become a software engineer, you might notice that you are first of all talking to the machines using coding, but then you are filling out certain tickets. You are actually talking to the manager, appraisal. You're talking to HR, support, recruiters, your peers. There is documentation involved. So all these kind of things are ways of communication, right? So coding is just a mechanism to talk to machines, and even the large language models are actually turning it into a human language. So communication is far more critical to you as a software engineer than just coding. So the whole point is, excuse me, to understand that you have to fix the root cause, right? Based on the feedback you are getting or not getting, you have to figure out yourself. But if you are not good at communication, just coding blindly is not going to get you through. Stop thinking about things in terms of college exams kind of a mindset. It's not a viva that somebody will ask you a question and you will give a fixed answer and get through things. No, you have to think on your feet and try to solve the problem. Your career is far more complex than a single examination or an interview. So you have to, most of the people will encourage you to think big. I'm saying you have to think about the big picture. Just being ambitious is not good enough. You have to understand what are the stakes and you have to plan accordingly, right? So see, entire responsibility is to earn enough to eventually retire after fulfilling all your financial responsibilities. That's the bare minimum one has to do in society, and getting there is becoming harder. So the rest of drama about uh, showing it off to others is purely optional. First you need to get there, right? So uh, one of the challenges that starts is in your early career itself. A lot of things get decided there itself. So one of the first stages or challenges is the campus recruitment. And in my opinion, the campus recruitment system is significantly broken because when it was initially introduced, the supply was at a very different level. It was much lower, and the probability of succeeding could be much higher. Nowadays, that's no longer the case. Ecosystem has evolved, but the processes seem to be lagging behind. So GPA is a convenient factor, unfortunately. But again, like they say, causation is not correlation. So somebody having a good GPA doesn't make them a good programmer. They are two different skill sets. It tends to happen that people with decent GPA can do decently in software jobs early on in their career, but later on in their career, there is a possibility they might struggle if they are not growing and learning. Another thing is the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 college system. Again, uh, somebody coming from tier 3 will definitely succeed is not a given, right? So a lot of things are circumstantial, and this whole tier 3 thing, etc., came into mostly because of the remote work was possible. Now companies are rolling back on that thing, and that trend might change. So it is, again, in the bigger scheme of things, uh, the career aspirants, like the early stage people, suffer the most when these kind of shifts happen in the hiring process. The next thing is that there isn't a lot of data about how campus recruitment, etc., happens, right? A lot of processes are quite opaque. So it breeds a lot of insecurity, anxiety, and stress for the people involved in the process, right? Over the time, as people get job and they have a steady salary, they tend to manage this better. But when recession and all hits, it becomes problematic, and these kind of things built from the early on stages of the career itself, right? So let's look at an example. Let's say a hypothetical company wants to hire 1,000 fresh lower level institute and those kind of things. So this is where the tier 1 to 3 thing came into equation. Then maybe because of this kind of distribution, the maximum seats that are allocated to each institute will vary, because even the recruitment department will have their own kind of an agreement that you cannot hire everyone from here, maybe maximum 10. So this basically defines what is your competition on that particular day in a campus interview, if at all that company has come to your campus and you are eligible for it, right? So you can at least see that these are the number of people I'm competing with today. You don't know how many people were interviewed before, how many will get afterwards, but on that day your competition is those 50 60 people who are eligible for that interview, assuming you are too. In an open house, everyone from the city or a couple of cities gets invited, so the numbers can go to hundreds, maybe even a few thousand. And when you are applying online, then entire country can apply. Whether they are eligible or not, it doesn't matter. But you are competing with thousands of people. But what you will notice here is that the numerator is constant, which is not told to you. The denominator keeps changing and you have to keep assuming and competing with it. So you are always shooting in the dark. So the long-term impact of this campus recruitment thing is, the longer you stay in the denominator, the slower your career growth happens, because more and more people keep getting added to this particular denominator. And with the supply increasing exponentially, the success ratios are declining because the numerator is not growing exponentially. The numerator is stagnating. And with AI, a lot of these numerators will remain where they are, right? Because now fewer and fewer people will be required because AI is getting better at automation. Forget about the AGI stuff. It is getting better at automation at least, right? So that's where a lot of confusion comes in, that even if you are not earning the highest salary as a software engineer in society, you might be doing decently, right? But social media is full of the numerator analysis and it builds a pressure which can be harmful to your career. So this can lead to something which I would call coding addiction. People are coding blindly without actually solving any problem. How many times are you going to reverse a linked list or write an LRU or a graph if you really don't know how graphs are used or stored, right? So you have to understand the notion of software engineering better. Just coding isn't going to get you anywhere. And people are practicing things which are not relevant, right? So just a second. So like I said, communication is the key. If you cannot communicate your solution, you solving that problem might not be useful for a longer career. So it is kind of disappointing that the bigger picture is missed by most of the uh, aspirants, right? So it is something which you need to do it on yourself. You cannot wait for somebody to come and solve that problem for you. So balance your preparation. Try to understand what are the constraints around you and optimize for them. You cannot keep learning something which is niche and which we are told by someone who doesn't have the experience and hasn't seen enough to comment about. So now let's assume somehow you have got into the ecosystem, your first job. Somehow, I'm just saying somehow, it can be really tough for many. But now comes the question that do you really feel the experience which you are getting is aligned with your career goal? Are your skills transferable? Can you make a long enough career out of it? Right? Because you have to stay in the workforce for at least 20 to 25 years based on the kind of salaries that are there. So your skills need to be transferable. So here is my career summary. I started in insurance domain, then I worked in signal processing, email servers. So on the left hand side, you will see the kind of things, domains I have touched upon. And on the x-axis, you will see the years. And you will notice that there are many overlapping things, like distributed systems keep showing up everywhere. Even when I was doing map making or digital cinema, or even when I was doing my thesis for signal processing. So these kind of technical skills, you have to sometimes step back, understand the fundamentals, and you can keep applying them everywhere. So signal processing, also the statistical aspects of things, they help me everywhere because performance engineering is mostly about statistical analysis, right? So in general, you have to understand that employers seek problem solvers with domain knowledge. That's their preference. And switching domains without preparation can be harmful. Even if you might be getting a CTC bump, you might be actually damaging your career because you're starting from zero in that particular domain. And after maybe 5 or 8 years of experience, no one is going to give you a second chance to start from zero, right? So that is another reason why many people move to management, because again, it is unfortunate that people think domain knowledge doesn't help in management, but that's a talk for some other day, right? And as you can see that a lot of infrastructure related development is becoming more critical, but fewer and fewer people are doing it, right? Like building control planes. So if you want to get into those kind of projects, you have to start early in your career, and it will take around 4 to 5 years, if at all you get lucky, to move into those kind of jobs. But even if you can't, it's fine. You need to accept and move on. That is also equally important. So that's where understanding that what your knowledge means in the current landscape of things is important. Like many people say, I'm a Java developer, I can fit in everywhere. Not necessarily. That is only applicable within the first 2, maybe 3 years of your career, where your knowledge is supposed to be generic and language specific. After that, you have to come up with solutions end to end. So your breadth is challenged. And a lot of things are not mentioned decently in the job descriptions, which makes life even harder. So you have to invest in some kind of expertise. If you become a domain expert, then you might become a subject matter expert and you will move away from coding and those kind of things. But again, that is something which you have to plan, because you will have to keep proving it over and over, right? So the way trends are moving nowadays, it seems like software is becoming integral part of many other industries, for example, healthcare, manufacturing, logistics, etc. So there you have to apply software engineering principles in that particular domain, which is something which demands a lot of knowledge on both sides. So you have to be prepared for that thing. So now comes the biggest speed bump in many people's career, misinformation, right? So a lot of things are promised to you, and what really happens is very different. So maybe you can leave a comment about some of the worst advice which you have followed in your career. In my particular case, it was something giving up my F1 visa. So I didn't choose to pursue PhD during the 2008 financial crisis aftermath. And the only thing somebody had to tell me was, don't give up your visa status. That's the most important thing. You will never be able to get it back. But such is life. So life needs to move on. So this trend which is there, just a second, that people have this ambition that they are constantly preparing for FANG and they want to do nothing else. Either you get in FANG or you just stay in your job. Now that is like saying that unless I'm rich, I won't earn, right? So being rich, which is a relative term, and not ending up having to borrow money ever from anyone, are two very different perspectives of looking at something, right? The first one, which is about being rich, is optional. The second one is a necessity. You have to become self-sufficient in terms of finances, right? That is like a moral duty. So you have to look at things from a very realistic perspective. So anyone promising you only the first and not talking about the second is uh, not a good guide for you. Now the coaching industry has just become like I don't know what to call it, but everyone feels that they can fix their career by half an hour session of coaching, which doesn't happen. Your career, like I said, gets decided within the first 5 years. After that, you are just trying to do cosmetic changes. When it comes to fundamentals like algorithms and data structures, you have MIT OpenCourseWare available on YouTube. You have lectures from Stanford online on YouTube. You can learn computer science there, not just data structures, algorithms, but all the fundamentals as well. And these lectures have been there for ages. Like I used them to study linear algebra by Gilbert Strang back in 2008. I think that was even before YouTube got acquired by Google. So the knowledge, if you are seeking, is there. Follow their course pages, whatever book they recommend. If you can buy it in your country for a cheaper price as a paperback, please invest in it. Buy it electronically if it is affordable, but do it sincerely. Initially, it will be painful. Trust me, it will be painful because the mathematical backgrounds will get challenged. But if you have to do it correctly only once in your life, then that is the best way of doing it, and it's for free. The next thing is tuition, which is basically slightly different than coaching. Here, you expect people to be holding your hands all the time. Every shortcut you take now, you can think of it like it is risking your kids' education. You're borrowing from your kids' education fund by refusing to grow on yourself. So, unfortunately, like these kind of circumstances pass across generations. If you don't do well early on in your career, you won't be in a financial position to help your kids get the best possible education they deserve, right? In many cases, it doesn't happen. Kids are also happy to settle for something in the middle, but that thing shouldn't happen. That's what should be a financial goal. But when you think from a tuition teacher's perspective, the more people there are in that denominator ratio which I mentioned of the success, right, the better off they are and able to send their kids to better universities, right? So stay away from people who think students are customers, right? You don't need tuitions after ideally you never need tuitions, but just in case you are not getting enough education from your primary source, then your secondary source should be doing what is morally correct and ethical. But it's ethics. So ethics are becoming optional now on the internet. So, how to judge if your learning is on the right track or not? It has to be practical. Anything that involves hands on projects is better than nothing. And if you are entering into the industry as a non computer science professional, then you should be taking courses in computer science as early as possible in your career. And you will be able to get into the infrastructure kind of jobs which I mentioned, right? So, in general, you can stay employed for a long time without effort, without doing these kind of things as well. But then AI is able to deliver the same quality of work as a person with very minimal knowledge nowadays, right? So I don't need to motivate you any further. All I'm saying is don't get displaced by AI at least within the next couple of years. So you need to avoid marketing gimmicks. Many people are selling you only dreams under the wrapper of knowledge. You should be able to identify what is pure knowledge and what is only marketing. Unless you have got your fundamentals in place, you don't need a coach. Coach helps you get better than what is best possible by you. First, get to that point. And definitely don't hire a coach just because they have worked at or working at some company which has a huge market cap. You get the idea of the kind of people I'm talking about. All they have done is cleared one interview. You cannot cross question them. You cannot ask them any specific questions about what their contribution has been to that big number. So don't fall for those kind of marketing traps. And if you are really serious about your career, you need to think, do you actually need a software engineering coach or a DSA coach or whatever they are calling themselves now? Or do you first need a certified independent financial advisor? If you don't know how to manage your money, first fix that problem and then dive into building your career so that you can focus on your career without having to worry about the external things. You cannot hand it off to someone, but if you do it well early on in your career, you have to spend maybe a couple of hours every year to tune your portfolio. But do give it a serious thought that what is your first priority? Fixing your how to manage your income. That's what you want to learn first, because career building will take a longer time. Technology keeps moving, so it is best that you are invested in learning technology independently without the stress of having to manage money. Right. So after this video is over, please pause and take 5 minutes to understand what is your top priority. So now let's look at the true competitors again, but in a far more dedicated manner. So think of your career like building a product. You cannot keep delivering the like shortcut based MVP every single time. The For those who have attended system design interviews or are conducting them, you already know that whatever the candidate is saying cannot be shipped in production, right? But once you are hired, you cannot give those kind of solutions. You need to do better, right? So you have to think whenever you are programming, you have to think like a compiler. You are thinking about machines, right? You are not the compilers. I haven't at least seen any compiler which takes input as what is your name, what is your employer's name, what is your designation, what is your net worth, what certifications you have, and accordingly I'll generate the binary. It doesn't happen that way, right? So you have to become good at converting requirements into efficient solutions. Code happens to be one part of it. So when to think about performance, scalability, and costs, these are the standards. If the budget of your team is X, then you have to fit your solution in X, and you have to give a valid reason if somebody asks why you couldn't do better. So you have to say that to do better, it will require 2x, 5x, whatever is that amount, right? So that is the technical aspect of things. But when you think of your economic challenges, inflation is one of the silent factors, and it affects everyone, not just your personal life. But when inflation goes up, if your company's profit margins go down, your appraisal will also go down, right? So everyone gets affected by inflation in the market. So if the market is cold, no matter how talented you are, you have to continue with your existing job if you don't get laid off, right? So you have to be practical about these kind of things. And at a very basic level, the best way to counter inflation is basically compounding, right? You build a big enough principle, you even if it grows at a lower rate over a long time, you're still able to cope up with the inflation. So these are dynamic factors which are totally out of your control. What you control is the principle and the time. The rate of increase is defined by certain external banks who also define the inflation, right? So you, as a software engineer, you have to understand that the careers are much shorter, even though they pay a lot more. So your investment strategy has to be designed accordingly, right? So I'll tell you an anti-pattern. A lot of people who have prioritized finances over their software careers. So when the remote work thing came in, they moved to tier 2 cities back in their hometown, and they were available only to be communicated through online media. So they missed out on all the conversations that were happening in office. And many people do this, like they leave work early and they miss out on a lot of conversations and in-person meetings, which is equally important to career. There is no fixed number, but if you have been working long enough, you will notice that there is a lot of conversation that doesn't get documented at all, and it is very context based. So you have to understand what is the kind of networking you want to do, what is necessary for your career, because being only on LinkedIn won't help your career all the time. It is just one of the sources. It is not the only source. So this is again something which you need to understand, your priorities. Now you have to think strategically. Like I mentioned, that the median salaries of software engineers are maybe slightly higher compared to people of the same age, right? But like the amount of money that gets spent into becoming a doctor and getting an expertise, it takes time and of course a lot of money. So that's why the doctors, they say that they tend to start making money by the time they are 40. Software engineers are already at the age of retirement by 40, right? So just changing a job with a 30% hike on CTC isn't going to help you ever, right? It is that shouldn't be a priority. It should be one of the items on the list, but not the priority. I have changed 8 jobs in my career. It takes a lot of time and energy. So you have to do it for the right reasons, right? Otherwise, you will burn out because everything is becoming quite hectic. So treat your career with a have a basic plan and a backup. These two are definitely necessary. Anything more than that, if you have any options, etc., it's good for you. But don't count on it as a guaranteed thing. Things will keep changing. You have to become good at planning, right? So if you cannot prepare for a tech interview in matter of 2 weekends, your career is already over. It sounds harsh, but that is true, because no one expects you to be more prepared than that, right? All you need to get is some coding skills. If you are applying for a coding job, then coding skills in your muscle memory, you should already be good at doing that. It is just to get in that browser based coding mode, and 2 weeks is more than enough for that. You cannot get better than that, even if you spend a year on it, and that is not a skill worth building as well. So I will make another video about this, how to prepare with AI. But the thing is that just because you are getting more jobs doesn't mean you're growing, because you can go out of market overnight, right? So understand that career growth and your jobs are two different things. You have to understand the difference between them, and uh, basically you have to converge. You have to understand that what are the core skills that are driving your career growth, right? They can be communication, they can be technical skills. Coding can take you only to a certain extent. If you are early stage professional, focus on mastering programming and converting the requirements into solutions, right? But like I showed you, that over a longer term, the focus areas will keep changing and you will have to keep making dynamic decisions. But there is no escape from understanding business. You have to understand business, but to what extent will be defined by the role which you are playing in that particular ecosystem. Financial awareness, again, how to build your emergency funds, what is inflation, how to manage inflation in your career, etc. These all things you have to learn once and keep just refining your approach. You cannot start from scratch every time. Like many people say that very nice story about when they held their kid's hand when the kid was born and they realized their responsibility. Many of them are too late. They should have been saving right from the day they started earning, irrespective of what their end goal was, right? So don't be that person who has a very nice story but not enough bank balance to send that kid to a Stanford or a Harvard. So LinkedIn is full of such stories. That's an entertainment nowadays more than a professional network. So that's the whole thing. You need a career strategy. You have to align your job applications with your long term goals. Just getting into a big tech company is no longer enough, because a lot of it also works with the uh, what do you say, the currency arbitrage, right? That if I get on site and I stay there for 10 years, then I will have such x amount of money. I can come back and buy whichever house I want and all those kind of things. But if your kids have to go through the same IIT and NEET entrance exams, you haven't solved the problem. You are just focusing on buying a certain kind of education for them. And so it is, again, a very sad state of affairs, which an individual like me or nobody like me cannot solve. But do understand that most of the people who go abroad, they are not sending their kids back to IITs, right? They are making their kids US citizens and they intend to send them to US universities. Whether they will go into Stanford or not, that's a separate story. That we only time will tell. But that's what I'm saying, that that's a career strategy. That when you move abroad, you have to ensure that the next generation gets the benefit of it. If you come back after 10 years and pay their management quota fees, you have failed to plan your career, right? You might be rich, you might be able to buy a lot of services, but you have failed. Very few people will point it out. But anyways, so that's the whole thing about the real competition of software professionals, right? So here's a recap. You need to understand your real competitors. Look at the bigger picture. Things like inflation, macroeconomics, they affect your life a lot more rather than just trying to get an appraisal compared to the person sitting next to you. Those 2% are very short term kind of a thing. Don't do petty things for that. You need to avoid misinformation and false hopes. After a point, you need to accept the reality that your career cannot be shaped any further, right? So don't waste time trying to buy that false sense of security through various tuition and coaching kind of a thing. Once the ship has sailed, it's fine. You focus on the next generation's well-being and try to help them build the best possible career. If you believe in big tech companies so much, you can buy their stocks. You don't have to work there. They are publicly traded, and it is a very legit way of building long-term wealth. You invest in stocks and sit on them. That is thinking like an investor. You don't need to know coding for that. So that's where you build a sustainable growth plan. You assume that software engineering career is going to last only 10 years. And then what else are you going to do? Be a little pessimistic. That's where the sustainability aspect of things comes into equation. And you will never have enough data to actually decide uh, uh, that whether the world has been fair to you or not, right? So that's the thing. You have to sometimes just make an assumption and uh, live with it, right? So that is the practical way of looking at things. So that's all from my side. I have just one question from Nikhil. He's asking that I'm sorry I just joined, but do you think DSA is still relevant? I myself am struggling with it. So yes, data structures and algorithm understanding is absolutely essential. It is the ability to write them under interview pressure that is unfair in my opinion. But the system is not going to change. So you just have to learn that a little mechanically. But in short, I will make a dedicated video about these things if I get like enough support for this kind of videos. That basically data structures and algorithms are what programs are meant to be, right? There is a very nice book by Nicholas Smith called Programs is equal to algorithms plus data structures. Whatever processing is going on anywhere in this world is some algorithm processing some particular data structure, because that's how electrical signals get converted into reality. So you need to look at it from a very abstract perspective. You need to understand data structures are data organization and algorithms are processing. And when your data organization is inefficient, basically when you are running at a scale like a big tech company, let's say Google, you are paying a lot for electricity that is being wasted for inefficient information. So that's where memory, hierarchy, caches, etc., everything comes into picture, right? So it is not just DSA that you need to understand. You need to understand the basics of computer science and how code gets shipped and how solutions are working. So it is a much wider thing. If you try to learn DSA only in isolation, you are trying to memorize something, which is going to only shorten your career, right? So you, like I mentioned, that if you weren't there when I mentioned it, you can go to MIT Open Courseware channel on YouTube. You can go to Stanford channel on YouTube. You can go to their course pages. You can see what are the prerequisites. The lectures are also uploaded there. So you can learn computer science on your own. That is something which I can guarantee you. I have done it personally myself. I am an MS electrical engineer, so I have never taken a computer science class as such, other than the vocational training I got in high school. But I had to learn programming myself, and the resources are out there. You have to seek knowledge. The longer you seek shortcuts, the shorter your career will be. That's a guarantee. You can keep job hopping. For some, it works. For many, it doesn't. And no one talks about those people. So I hope this answers your question if you're still around. If there are, I'll just wait for a couple of minutes just in case there is someone else who wants to ask something. But If you have made it this far later, then oh, great, you're here. So I got a confirmation. Uh, so yeah, the answers are out there. You just need to find it for yourself. You have to think long term. There will be challenges. No one can give you a guarantee about what when a company is hiring, etc. So those are the uncertainties. You have to treat them that way. But when it comes to knowledge, you can be absolutely sure about what's going on. It is very hard to tell what AI can do. One of the things you can look at it as AI as a way of automating things, right? So for software engineers, okay. So basically, there is a lot of boilerplate code which gets written, right? So those kind of things will get automated. So as a software engineer, you have to start working with these AI tools yourself and try to understand what their capabilities are, where they do things wrong. One of the pieces where I can tell you to focus is concurrency. You need to be very clear about how concurrent programs are written and how parallel programs are written, right? And for that, you need to have a understanding of computer architecture. And these are all basics which are taught to computer science students as an undergraduate program. Some may be in the advanced graduate category, but you can cover those things. So learn about operating systems, learn about computer architecture, how they connect with how software languages are designed, basically how memory management works, how resource management works. Because AI also at the end of the day is software, right? So there is an infrastructure aspect to AI. So using AI libraries is one thing. Very few people are building those libraries, but everyone can use it. So that is something which majority of software engineers can do with human language, maybe in 3-4 years. But building infrastructure is something which you need to understand yourself. And those things, like I mentioned earlier in the talk, that those are the jobs which you should be targeting in 3 to 4 years from now. And that is the ultimate gold standard. Application development will get automated. AI doesn't need to be intelligent for it. It is it can do it like the text completion that happens in IDEs, right? It has evolved over the years. So that kind of automation will continue to happen, but the correctness is something which a software engineer needs to be able to spot, and that requires practice. So you need to write bigger programs, and the best way is just go to GitHub, pick up something like a RocksDB or a Postgres code base. It will be daunting at first. Plan it out over 4 or 5 weeks. Every week you use any of the GitHub Copilot, etc. Go through the code, see how GitHub Copilot deals with that bigger code base, and where you are better than GitHub Copilot to get things done, where that particular thing. So there are many tools. I just mentioned GitHub Copilot because it has become free, I think, recently. So you can check it out. So I hope that answers your question. If you can just leave a comment, then it will be easier for me to stop the stream if no one else is listening. Okay, so again, Nikhil is asking a question. I saw you mentioned that 10 years perspective, will all SDs or SWs should be go to manager due to AI? No. Uh, people management is again a skill. It is not just a designation, it is a skill. If you are not good at managing people, then you have to, so around 5 years of your career, you have to decide whether you want to grow in a technical role or in a people management role. Communicating with people is part of both. It is just the priority. As an engineering manager, people communication takes a priority. As a technical person, technology takes priority, not just coding, but technology, whatever is available at that point in time, right? So if you, for example, if you take uh, like a bunch of my friends work at NVIDIA, right? So their focus kept changing from GPUs to these particular massive AI chips, and they continue to be in their technical roles. right? So as technology shifts, you have to keep catching up. It is not that suddenly you will wake up one day and somebody will tell you that no longer software engineers are required. Software engineers will have to do different kind of things. What is evolving are the tools, right? So like I was working with a developer who is in his late 50s. So he has worked with BI and those kind of text editors. So for him, IDEs are optional. For someone like me, I have never worked a lot with the BI tools till later in my career. So for me, IDEs seem to be the first thing to learn about a programming language, which is not the case anymore, right? You can just write your code in online compilers, right? So the tools are changing. The fundamentals of software engineers are in the computer science, like operating systems, networking, compact. These kind of things you need to understand. If you know only a programming language, then you are risking getting replaced by AI. If you understand the fundamentals, then AI becomes your helper. You can get things done faster if you know what needs to get done. That is the problem. Most people don't know what needs to get done, or rather, they are not investing in it. So that's a another complex issue of why that happens. But I'm telling you the outcome. So hopefully that answers your question. All right. So Uh, if there are no other questions, I would like to stop the stream. So just another few minutes or so. Oh, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. Yeah, I'll try to do more streams around these topics. They tend to be a little sensitive, so it takes a bit of preparation to ensure that something incorrect doesn't get uh, shared. That's why it takes time for me to come up with content and it doesn't go viral as well because it lacks entertainment. But anyways, all right. Thanks for listening, and you can share the stream with your friends, etc. And you yourself can go over it as well later. So, all right, I'll end the stream. If you have any other things, you can leave it in the comments. I'll try to answer them to best of my capability. All right. Have a nice weekend. Bye.